Hello and welcome back to the Ryland Report. I'm James Ryland.
And I'm Claire Ryland.
We are so glad you could join us today. For anyone new, what we do here is take a whole stack of reports, articles, historical documents, and we really try to sift through them. I tend to be the one who looks at the more extraordinary possibilities.
And I'm the one who gets stuck in the footnotes, checking the timelines and the documented details.
That today? Oh, today is a big one. We are tackling the grandfather of all of these stories, the one that really kicked off the entire modern UFO era.
It really is the foundational event. I mean, without what happened on this one day in July 1947, our entire pop culture would look completely different.
So I want you to picture the scene. It's July 8th, 1947. You're in a dusty little town in New Mexico. You pick up the Roswell Daily Record, and you're expecting, local news.
Branching prices, the weather.
Exactly. Instead, the headline just screams at you. RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region.
And just to be clear, RAF is the Roswell Army Airfield. And this wasn't some minor outpost. This was home to the 509th Bomb Group.
The only atomic bombing group in the entire world at that time.
Right. These are the most elite, most serious people in the military.
And they issue an official press release.
Yep.
They are telling the world they have a flying disc. I mean, can you imagine the shockwave?
It was massive. But then, and this is the whole story, right here, almost exactly 24 hours later, the narrative just snaps back.
The story's retracted. The flying disc is now a weather balloon.
And that's it. That's the pivot.
That pivot is the seed of everything that follows. Was it, a genuine embarrassing mistake? Or was that the very first clumsy step in a cover-up that's lasted almost 80 years?
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are not here to tell you what to believe. We're just going to walk you through the timeline, from that debris field in 47 through decades of silence to the explosion of interest in the late 70s and 80s.
We really want to understand how a pile of what was described as rubber and foil became the world's most famous alien legend.
And we're going to look at the actual sources, the old newspaper clips, the Air Force's own reports from the 90s, the witness transcripts, because the real story is so much weirder than just an alien crashed.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start at the beginning, 1947. And it didn't start with the military, did it? It started with a rancher.
Right. W.W. Mac Brazel. He was a ranch foreman near Corona, New Mexico, which is actually about 75 miles from Roswell. It's really out there.
And the story goes, there was this huge thunderstorm the night before, lightning everywhere. The next morning, maybe early July, he goes out to check his sheep, and he finds this stuff, this debris field.
And looking at his original description, what he actually told the paper back then, it wasn't a crashed ship, not a saucer with a hull. He called it a large area of bright wreckage, rubber strips, tinfoil, some kind of tough paper, tape, and little sticks.
He said the whole pile probably weighed 5 pounds.
Exactly. It wasn't some heavy metallic craft. It was shredded.
But he doesn't immediately run to the authorities, which I find interesting. He just kind of ignores it for a few days.
He does. But you have to remember the context. This was the summer of saucers. A couple of weeks before, this pilot, Kenneth Arnold, reported seeing these high-speed objects skipping through the air.
That's where we get the term flying saucer from, right? He said their movement was like a saucer skipping across water.
Yes, it was about the movement, not the shape. But the press ran with flying saucer, and suddenly everyone was seeing them. So Brazel goes into town a few days later, and he's hearing all these rumors about flying discs.
And he starts thinking, wait a minute. That junk in my pasture.
Maybe that's one of them. So he gathers some of it up, brings it into Roswell, and shows it to Sheriff George Wilcox.
And the sheriff has no idea what he's looking at. So he does what you do. He calls the local army base.
Which is when the military gets involved. They send out the base intelligence officer, a Major Jesse Marcel. And it's important to know, Marcel was a serious guy, head of intelligence for an atomic bomb group.
He goes out to the ranch, gathers up the rest of the debris, loads it into his Buick, and drives it back to the base.
And this leads directly to that press release. July 8th, the public information officer, Walter Haut, puts out the statement. The 509th has a flying disc.
It's still incredible to me that it happened, that multiple officers looked at this pile of sticks and foil and said, yep, that's one of them.
Or they were told to say that. Because look what happens next. The debris is flown to Fort Worth, to General Roger Ramey. He takes one look at it, calls a press conference, and just completely deflates the whole story.
Literally.
He brings in the reporters, shows them the debris on his floor, which is clearly foil and balsa wood sticks, and says, this is a raw wind target. It's a radar reflector for a weather balloon.
And there are those photos. You've probably seen them. Major Marcel is crouching next to this sad pile of foil.
Mm.
And the look on his face, he does not look happy.
He looks like a guy who's been told to play along.
He looks like he's being made to look like a fool. And it works. The next day's headline is, General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. And that was it. The story just died.
That's the part that gets lost. For 30 years, Roswell was nothing. It was a non-event, a misidentified balloon, a footnote.
Until 1978. And that's when everything changes.
Right. Enter Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist turned full-time UFO investigator. In 1978, he's chasing down old leads and gets a tip to call a retired Major Jesse Marcel.
Marcel is living quietly. He's long retired. And when Friedman gets him on the phone, Marcel decides it is finally time to talk. He retracts his retraction.
He tells Friedman the whole weather balloon story was a lie, a cover story. He says the material he picked up on that ranch was, quote, nothing made on this earth.
And this is where the legend really takes shape. Marcel describes this foil. He says you could wad it up and it would just unfold itself without any creases, perfectly smooth.
Like memory metal.
Exactly. He said it was light as a feather, but you couldn't dent it with a sledgehammer. And he described these little beams, these I-beams.
The stick.
Right. He said they had symbols on them, a kind of writing.
Pinkish purple hieroglyphics.
Yeah. Nothing he'd ever seen before. Now, skeptics will say, look, this is 30 years later. Memories change. But his son, Jesse Marcel Jr., who was just a kid then, also says he saw it. He says his dad woke him up to show him parts of a flying saucer, and he remembers those purple symbols.
And that interview just blew the lid off everything. Friedman teams up with a couple of authors, and they published the Roswell incident in 1980.
And that book is where the modern myth really begins, because they added something totally new, something that was never, ever mentioned in 1947.
Bodies.
Alien bodies.
It's a huge shift in the narrative. In 1947, it was all about the debris. Brazel, Marcel, the newspapers, no one mentioned bodies. But the 1980 book introduces these secondhand stories of another crash site and small humanoid bodies being recovered.
And as soon as you add bodies, the stakes go through the roof.
Yeah.
It's not just about technology anymore. It's about biology. It's a much bigger secret to keep.
And that story just snowballed. Through the 80s, you get the majestic 12 documents that supposedly prove President Truman created a secret committee to handle it all.
Though we should say, those documents are pretty widely considered to be fakes. Even a lot of UFO researchers think so. The signatures were clearly photocopied. The date formats were wrong.
Right. But it added to the lore. And then in the 90s, you get Glenn Dennis. For a while, he was the star witness. He'd been a mortician in Roswell back in '47.
His story is,
Wow.
it's really compelling. He claims he got calls from the base asking about child-sized, hermetically sealed caskets. He says a nurse friend of his at the base hospital told him she was forced to help with an autopsy on these small gray beings with big heads.
A terrifying story. But this is where you have to be rigorous. Researchers dug into it, and it fell apart. He gave a fake name for the nurse.
First, he said her name was Naomi Self.
Right. No record of any nurse named Naomi Self ever serving at that base. Then he changed the name. Still nothing. He later admitted he made the name up to protect her identity. But then none of the other nurses who were there could confirm any part of his story.
It's so frustrating because it just muddies everything. Is he lying? Or is he a real witness who is just confused or trying to protect someone?
But all this pressure, the books, the TV shows, it finally forced the government's hand.
So 1994, the Air Force releases a report, and they finally admit it. They say, okay, you're right. The weather balloon story was a lie.
That's the moment, a huge admission. General Ramey lied in 1947, but they said he wasn't covering up aliens. He was covering up something called Project Mogul.
This is where it gets really interesting. What was Project Mogul?
It was a top-secret Cold War spy project,
Yeah.
but they weren't spying with cameras. They were spying with sound.
With sound.
Yeah. Scientists had discovered this layer in the upper atmosphere where sound waves could travel for thousands of miles. The plan was to float these huge balloon arrays up there to listen for the sound waves from Soviet atomic bomb tests.
And we're not talking about one little weather balloon here.
No, not at all. This was a train of equipment 600 feet long. It had multiple balloons, sensors, and radar targets so they could track it.
Okay, so this starts to line up with what Mac Brazel found.
It lines up almost perfectly. Brazel found rubber strips. Those were from the neoprene balloons. He found tinfoil and sticks. That's the radar target.
Okay, but what about the one thing that always stuck with me? The purple hieroglyphics. The alien writing.
This is my favorite detail. The radar targets for Project Mogul. They were made by a toy company in New York.
A toy company.
A toy company. And because it was right after the war, materials were short. To reinforce the seams on the balsa wood sticks of the targets, the workers used a roll of decorative tape they had lying around in the factory.
No, don't tell me.
It was tape with pink and purple flower patterns on it. When that tape shredded and weathered in the desert sun, the remnants of the floral design looked like strange, abstract purple symbols.
So the alien language was floral tape from a toy factory.
According to the Air Force, yes. And it explains everything. It explains why an intelligence officer like Jesse Marcel wouldn't recognize it. Mogul was top secret. He didn't have the need to know. He saw weird, unearthly junk and genuinely didn't know what it was.
So the government was happy to let the world think flying saucer for 24 hours? Because the truth that they were spying on Soviet nukes was an even bigger secret.
Exactly. It was a cover-up, just not the one everyone thought.
Okay. That is a very compelling explanation for the debris. It really is. The tape, the sticks, the foil, it all tracks. But it doesn't explain the bodies. Project Mogul didn't have a crew.
It did not.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the second Air Force report in 1997, the Roswell report. Case closed. They knew they had to address the bodies.
And their explanation for that was crash test dummies.
Anthropomorphic dummies, yes. In the 1950s, so later than Roswell, the Air Force was running projects like High Dive, testing high-altitude parachutes. They were dropping these human-sized dummies from balloons all over New Mexico.
And what did these dummies look like?
They were about human-sized, bald, with a kind of grayish skin, and the retrieval crews would often transport them in insulated bags that looked, well, they looked like body bags.
But wait, here's the problem I have with that. Roswell's 47. These dummy drops started in the mid-50s. That's a gap of almost a decade.
The Air Force's explanation for that is a phenomenon they call time compression.
Time compression.
The theory is that when you interview someone 40 years after the fact, their memories merge. A witness might have a real memory of the weird Mogul debris in 47, and they might have a separate memory of seeing a military truck with a dummy in it in, say, 1956. Over the decades, those two memories fuse into one story. I saw a crash with bodies. That feels, I don't know, it feels a little too convenient. I get the memory is tricky, but confusing events that happen 10 years apart, it just seems like an easy way for the Air Force to explain away all the most compelling testimony.
It's a tidy explanation, I'll give you that. But you have to remember, the body stories didn't even start to surface until the late 70s. That does suggest the narrative was evolving over time, probably influenced by movies and TV.
Oh, speaking of which, we can't ignore all the hoaxes. The culture around this was just... it was wild by the 90s.
Alien autopsy film?
Oh, man, 1995. I remember watching that. Fox aired it. It was this grainy black and white footage of surgeons dissecting a gray alien. It looks so real.
It was a global phenomenon and a complete total fake. The guy who released it, Ray Santilli, admitted it years later. It was filmed in a London apartment in 1995.
With a dummy filled with sheep brains and raspberry jelly.
Yep. But for a while, millions of people thought that was the real Roswell footage. It just shows you how much people wanted to believe. And then you had books like The Day After Roswell in '97. This guy, Philip Corso, an Army officer, claimed he personally handed out alien tech from the crash to corporations, fiber optics, lasers, night vision, all from the saucer.
Which is a great story, but it just doesn't hold up. We have very clear, very human paper trails for the invention of all of those things.
Plus, there was that whole mess with the foreword, right?
Oh, with Senator Strom Thurmond? Yeah, Corso got him to write a foreword, but Thurmond thought it was just a memoir about the Cold War. When he found out the book was about reverse engineering alien spaceships, he was furious and demanded they take his name off it.
It just shows how tangled it all is. You have real military secrets mixed with later testimony, mixed with outright hoaxes.
So, when you step back and look at the whole messy picture, what do you see?
It's hard to say. I mean, the Project Mogul explanation is very, very strong. It fits the physical evidence from 1947 perfectly. The tape, the foil, it's all there. And the fact that the body stories came so much later, that makes me skeptical.
I think it's a perfect storm. You have a real classified event, Project Mogul. You have a government that lies about it for national security. That lie creates a vacuum. And for 30 years, that vacuum gets filled with speculation and rumor until it becomes a myth.
The ultimate irony, right? By trying to hide a spy balloon, they accidentally created the biggest alien story of all time.
That's it in a nutshell.
But I will leave you and everyone listening with one final thought. If Project Mogul explains the debris and crash test dummies explain the bodies and time compression explains the witnesses, is the case really closed? Or is that perfect explanation just the best cover story of all? A neat and tidy way to finally put this whole thing to bed.
And that question is why we're still talking about it today.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Okay.